In this video, I'm going to show you how to talk about yourself in English in a simple, easy, and clear way. Many English learners feel nervous when someone asks them, "Can you tell me about yourself?" But don't worry. Today I'll make it easy and fun for you. And to help you understand better, I'm going to use the story of myself as an example. I'll talk about my name, my family, my daily routine, hobbies, job, and my dreams, all in simple English. As you listen, try to shadow and repeat after me the sentences. And think about how you would talk about yourself in English. This is a great way to practice speaking and listening. Let's begin the story and our journey of learning English together.
Chapter 1. Family. I was born in England in the year 1632. My father came from Germany, but he moved to England before I was born. My mother was English, so I grew up with a mix of both cultures. We were a big family. I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. Together, we lived happily because my father worked hard as a businessman. He earned a lot of money, which allowed us to live comfortably. I went to school and got a good education, and life seemed perfect at that time. But deep inside, I always dreamed of something more. I wanted to travel across the sea and explore new lands. My father was a kind man who cared deeply about me. He wanted only the best for my future. But he didn't share my dream of traveling by sea. He thought sailing was dangerous and uncomfortable. When I turned 18, he called me into his room to talk. As soon as I entered, he asked me why I wanted to leave home and travel so much. Then he told me all the reasons why traveling by sea was not a good idea. "It's risky," he said. "You might never come back alive." His voice trembled and tears filled his eyes. It was clear how worried he was. After our conversation, I thought long and hard about what my father had said. Yes, traveling by sea was dangerous, and it wasn't going to be easy or comfortable. There was even a chance I could die. But at the same time, the idea of seeing new countries, meeting new people, and experiencing adventures excited me. Every single day, I imagined myself on a ship, exploring faraway places. Staying at home felt harder and harder. I tried talking to my mother about it. "Please help me convince Father," I begged. "I really want to go on a journey by sea. I want to see the world." My mother loved me very much, but she agreed with my father. She believed staying in England would be safer and better for me. 1 year passed, and then something changed. In September 1651, I visited Hull, a town in England. While I was there, I met a friend whose father owned a ship. They traveled by sea often, and their next trip was planned to London. "Come with us," my friend urged. At first I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready for such an adventure, but I decided to give it a try. So I joined them on their journey to London. I felt thrilled. It was my very first time traveling by sea, and everything seemed exciting. The first hour of the trip was wonderful. The weather was calm, and the ocean looked peaceful. But then trouble began. A storm approached. The wind grew stronger and stronger, and the waves became bigger and bigger. The ship rocked violently, moving up and down. I felt terrified. All I could think about was my cozy bed back home. By morning, however, the storm ended. The sky cleared, and the weather stayed beautiful all day and night. Everything was quiet again. Later, someone came over to talk to me. He joked around and made me laugh. He asked me how I felt during the storm. "What storm?" he teased. "That was just a little breeze." He laughed and offered me a drink. I drank too much and ended up drunk. That night I slept soundly. The next day, thoughts of home faded. I started dreaming even more about traveling by sea. For the next 3 days, the wind slowed us down, and the ship moved very slowly. Then, the wind picked up speed and we sailed faster. Suddenly, another storm hit us, and it was worse than the first one. This time, I was truly scared. The waves crashed against the ship, and the wind howled loudly. Everyone on board looked frightened, including me. Despite the fear, I realized that traveling by sea was exactly what I had imagined. Exciting, unpredictable, and full of challenges. I knew this was just the beginning of my story, and no matter what happened, I wanted to keep exploring the world. Chapter 2. Storm. The storm hit us hard, and I felt more scared than ever before. My heart was racing, and all I could do was lie down on my bed. I couldn't move because every time I looked outside through the small window, I saw huge waves crashing against the ship. The waves were so big that they looked like mountains rising from the sea. Other ships nearby seemed tiny, almost like toys being tossed around by the angry ocean. I thought about home again. All I wanted was to be back in England, safe and warm in my own bed. The storm raged on, and everyone on board started praying for help. We were all terrified, and nobody knew what to do. Then, suddenly, one of the sailors shouted, "There's a hole in the ship!" Everyone rushed to see what had happened. Water was pouring inside through the hole, and it was clear we were in serious trouble. Some men went below deck to try and fix the problem. They worked hard to pump the water out, but it wasn't easy. I stayed frozen in fear, unable to even stand up. I just sat there feeling useless while the others struggled to save us. But then one of the sailors came over to me. He said firmly, "You need to get down there and help." His voice shook me out of my panic, and I realized I couldn't just sit and do nothing. So I went below deck with him. Down there, the water was already knee-deep, and it kept coming in faster. We worked together, pumping as fast as we could. It was exhausting, but we didn't stop for a moment. Even though we were working hard, the hole was too big and the water wouldn't stop flowing in. Just when things seemed hopeless, I heard a loud noise, a gunshot. It was a signal from our captain. He fired the gun to let us know how serious the situation was. When I heard the shot, I thought, "This is it. This is the end." Our ship was badly damaged, and it felt like we were sinking. I believed we had no chance of surviving. Still, we kept trying to pump out the water. But no matter how hard we worked, the hole let in more and more water. By now, the entire ship was filling up, and it was only a matter of time until it sank completely. Thankfully, the weather improved a little after a while. The wind calmed down and the rain stopped, but the damage was done. The ship was full of water, and we needed help desperately. That's when we spotted another ship not far away. It was still afloat, and its crew sent a small boat to rescue us. The men rowing toward us risked their lives to save ours. As soon as they reached us, we climbed aboard their small boat. We couldn't return to their larger ship because it was already too far away. About 15 minutes later, our big ship disappeared beneath the waves. Watching it sink made me feel both relieved and sad at the same time. Relieved because we had escaped death, but sad because everything we owned was lost forever. On the small boat, I was still very scared. What if another storm came? What if pirates found us? But for now, we were safe. In the distance, we saw land. We paddled closer and closer until we finally arrived at the shore. There, we met people from a nearby village. They welcomed us warmly and gave us food, water, and even some money to help us continue our journey. After resting for a bit, I decided to travel to London. I took a long trip overland, walking most of the way. When I finally reached London, I met a kind captain who offered to take me with him on his next voyage. He planned to sail to Africa, and he promised me that I could make good money there. He explained how trade worked between England and Africa. He told me which items were cheap in England but expensive in Africa. I bought some goods using the money I had left, and soon we set off on our journey. The trip to Africa went smoothly, and when we returned to England, I had earned enough money to start thinking about traveling again. I learned basic skills about controlling a ship from the captain, and I began dreaming of going back to Africa. This time, however, I wasn't prepared for the dangers ahead. Soon after we started our second journey, something terrible happened. A pirate ship appeared and chased us. The pirates caught up with us quickly. First, they tried to connect their ship to ours, but we pushed them away. Unfortunately, they attacked again, and this time, they succeeded. Many of our men were killed or injured during the fight. Eventually, we surrendered, and all of us became prisoners of the pirates. Chapter 3. Woman, after the pirates caught us, I became a slave to their captain. Life as a slave was hard. Every day I had to work from morning until night. Sometimes I worked in the house, cleaning or cooking. Other times I worked outside in the garden. The captain told me what to do, and I had no choice but to obey. I didn't like being a slave. I wanted my freedom back more than anything. One day, while I was working inside the house, I met a young woman. She was also a slave. She cleaned the rooms and helped with chores. When I first saw her, I thought she was beautiful. Her face was kind, and her eyes seemed to shine, even though life was difficult for her. I tried to talk to her, but she didn't speak my language. Still, we found ways to understand each other. We used gestures and smiles to communicate. Sometimes, when no one was watching, she touched my hand gently. Those moments made me feel happy, even though they were short. If the captain saw us together, he might punish her, so we had to be careful. But whenever our eyes met, I felt something special. A connection between us. It was like she understood how lonely I felt, and I understood her pain too. I began to think about her all the time. I hoped to see her every day. She became important to me. In my heart, I believed I loved her. To me, she was my girlfriend, and I was her boyfriend. But it was complicated because slaves weren't allowed to have relationships. Thinking about this made me sad. How could we ever be together? What if I never saw her again? The captain sometimes took me with him when he went fishing. A young boy usually came along to help. We used a small boat, and sometimes friends of the captain joined us. One day, fog surrounded our boat. We couldn't see anything, not the land, not the sea, nothing at all. We tried to find our way back, but it was impossible. The whole day and night passed before we finally reached the shore. When we returned, the captain decided to use a bigger boat next time. He said it would be safer for longer trips. Then one day, the captain gave me instructions. "Put more food and drinks on the boat," he said, "and bring some guns too." He was waiting for important guests who wanted to go fishing and hunting with him. I prepared everything as he asked, but the guests never arrived. This was my chance to escape. All the food, water, and weapons were already on the boat. I planned to leave early the next morning, but there was one problem. I wanted to take the young woman with me. I loved her, and I couldn't imagine leaving without her. Yet, I didn't know how to get her onto the boat without anyone noticing. It worried me deeply. Part of me wanted to stay just to be near her, but another part of me knew I had to try to be free. The next morning came. I prayed that I would see the young woman in the house. When I entered, she was there. She looked at me, and our eyes met. Maybe she sensed something was different about this day. Maybe she knew it was goodbye. She smiled softly and touched my hand one last time. Her face was sad, and mine was too. Then she turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. An hour later, I was ready. The young boy and I got into the boat. One of the captain's friends came with us as our boss for the day. As we sailed away, I kept thinking about the woman. My heart ached, but I reminded myself that I was now free, or at least closer to freedom than before. Chapter 4. Lion Soon. After we left the land, I knew I had to act fast. I pretended that I couldn't catch any fish. Then we sailed further away from the shore. Our boss said, "We can try to fish here." At that moment, he walked to the front of the boat. I saw my chance. Quickly, I pushed him into the water. He tried to swim back, but when he saw the gun in my hand, he changed his mind. He swam away as fast as he could. After he was gone, I turned to the boy. I needed to know if he would help me or not. When I looked at him, I could see that he was on my side. For 2 long years, I had been a slave. Now I was finally free. We started rowing as fast as we could. The wind was good, and we moved quickly. We were far from the pirate land, but I was still scared. What if the pirates found us? I didn't want to take any chances. I was so afraid that I didn't let the boy stop the boat for 5 days. On the 6th day, I began to feel safer. We took the boat close to the land. There we saw a small river. We needed fresh water, so we waited until it was dark. We wanted to go up the river where the water was clean and not mixed with salt from the sea. But as we got closer, we started to hear loud noises. It sounded like animals were washing themselves in the water. The boy became very scared. He didn't want to keep going. I was scared too, but I stayed quiet. Suddenly, one animal jumped into the water and started swimming toward us. The boy shouted, "Let's go! Let's leave!" But I didn't move. I grabbed a gun and aimed carefully. When the animal came close enough, I fired. The animal turned around and swam back to the land. After hearing the shot, the other animals ran away. We stayed on the boat until morning. In the morning, we ate some bread. Then the boy said, "I want to go to the beach." I decided to go with him. We brought 2 big bottles to collect fresh water. While the boy went deeper into the land, I stayed close to the beach. I didn't want to lose sight of the boat. The boy came back after some time. He was holding something in his hands. It looked like a chicken. He was so happy, and I was happy too. Happy. Now we had meat and fresh water. For a while, life felt okay. We traveled along the coast of Africa. I hoped we might meet an English ship, but we didn't see anyone. One morning we went to the river to get more water. As we walked along the beach, we suddenly saw a lion. It was huge, only 20 meters away from us. The boy froze in fear. When the lion saw us, it started running toward us. We didn't have much time. I grabbed my gun and fired 3 times. The first bullet hit its leg, the second hit its head, and the third finished it off. The lion fell to the ground. We couldn't eat its meat because it wasn't good, but I wanted to take its skin. We carried the skin back to the boat and laid it out to dry. It dried quickly in the sun. Chapter 5. Ship. For the next 10 days, we kept moving along the coast. We stopped only when we needed fresh water. One day, we saw people living on the land. It was the first time we had seen anyone since we escaped. A large group of people came to the beach to watch us. There were many children among them. They seemed curious about us, but we didn't know if they were friendly or not. I wanted to stop and talk to them, but the boy was scared. He didn't want to go near them. "What if they hurt us?" he asked. I understood his fear, but I also knew we needed help. The people on the beach started waving at us. They brought some food and put it on the ground. Then they walked back, leaving the food for us. It was a kind gesture. We waited until they were far away before we went to the beach to take the food. The food was dry meat, and it tasted good. After we took the food, the people came closer again. They smiled and seemed happy that we accepted their gift. I wanted to thank them, but I didn't have anything to give them in return. I felt bad about that. Suddenly, 2 animals ran out of the forest toward the people. One of the animals attacked a young girl. She screamed, and everyone looked scared. I grabbed my gun and shot at the animal. The bullet hit it, and it fell to the ground. The second animal saw this and ran away. The people were shocked when they heard the sound of the gun. They had never seen a weapon like mine before. The girl who was attacked was safe, and her family thanked us. They brought more food and water to show their gratitude. We took everything back to our boat. Now we had plenty of supplies. For the next 10 days, we didn't stop anywhere. We traveled along the coast hoping to find an English ship, but we didn't see any ships during that time. One morning, as we passed some small islands, I thought about stopping there. Before I could decide, the boy suddenly shouted, "Look, a ship!" He pointed to the horizon. At first I thought it might be another pirate ship, and I felt scared. But then I looked carefully and realized it wasn't pirates. It was a Portuguese ship. I fired my gun to get their attention. The sailors on the ship heard the sound and saw us. They sailed closer, and soon we were climbing aboard their ship. The crew spoke Portuguese, Spanish, and French, but I couldn't understand any of those languages. Luckily, there was a Scottish sailor on the ship. He came to talk to me, and I told him our story. The sailors were very kind to us. They agreed to take me and the boy with them. I was so happy to be safe again. To thank them, I offered them the things from our small boat, the guns, food, and tools. But the captain refused to take them for free. "I will pay you for these items," he said. That made me feel even better because it showed how honest he was. I told him he could buy our small boat too. I gave him a good price, half of what it was worth, and let him keep the rest of the things for free. The captain agreed. He also wanted to train the boy to become a sailor. When I heard this, I felt unsure. I didn't think the boy should start working so young. He deserved freedom, just like me. But the boy was excited about the idea. He wanted to learn how to sail and see the world. In the end, I let him make his own choice. Chapter 6. Wife. The boy wanted to work for the captain. He was excited about learning how to sail and see the world. So he started his training to become a sailor. The ship was heading to Brazil. After 22 days, we arrived there. I said goodbye to the boy and the other sailors. Brazil was a new place in South America. Many people went there to start fresh lives, and I decided to do the same. At first, I didn't know anyone in Brazil, but soon I met some people who owned sugar plantations. They became my friends. I liked Brazil a lot. Over time, I learned the language and felt more comfortable living there. I had some money from the captain of the Portuguese ship. With that money, I bought a small piece of land. I started growing sugar on it. In the beginning, my plantation wasn't big. For the first 2 years, I didn't produce much sugar. But then, things changed. My plantation grew quickly, and I became successful. Life was good for me. I was single, but I didn't feel lonely because I was busy with my work. Every month, I earned more money. In Brazil, life was simple. We didn't have many rules from the government. We only paid small taxes. As my plantation grew, I had enough money to hire someone to help me at home. I asked my friends if they knew any good women who could clean my house. One of my friends told me, "I have a daughter. She is 18 years old. She can work for you. She is also a very good cook." The next day, his daughter came to my house. She was friendly but a little shy. She was also very pretty. We talked for a short time. I told her what I needed her to do. The next day, she came back to my house. She cleaned the dirty floor and furniture. She took out the trash. She came to my house every Monday and Thursday. She stayed for 4 hours each time. She did more than just cleaning. She also cooked meals for me and fed my cat. I was always happy to see her. Sometimes we ate breakfast or lunch together and we talked. Then one week she got sick and couldn't come to my house. I felt strange when she wasn't there. I missed her. That's when I realized maybe I loved her. 1 week later, she came back to my house. I was so happy to see her. She looked happy too. I hugged her, and then I kissed her. It was a long kiss. 2 weeks later, I went to her father's house. I asked him, "Can I marry your daughter?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I agree." I was the happiest man in the world. 2 months later, we got married. We started planning our future together. We dreamed about having a family and making our plantation even bigger. We needed a bigger house and more money to build it. I thought about doing business in Africa again. I could make a lot of money there quickly. I talked to my friends about this idea. Some of them liked it, but I wasn't sure yet. Chapter 7. Hurricane one day. 3 of my friends came to visit me at my house. They had an idea. They wanted to go to Africa to do business. They asked me if I would like to join them. I thought about it for a moment and said, "Yes, I want to go with you." We started preparing everything we needed for the journey. We packed many things for trade like cups, mirrors, knives, and other goods. After some time, we were ready to leave. I said goodbye to my wife and promised her I would come back soon. Our plan was to be away for only 2 months. We left Brazil on the 1st of September, 1655. The ship was very big, but there were only 17 men on board. Most of the space was filled with things for trade. At first, the weather was good, but it was also very hot. Everything seemed fine, and I felt excited about the trip. But then something terrible happened. A hurricane came just 1 week after we left. It was extremely strong, and our ship was in great danger. When the hurricane finally passed, we saw that we were close to the northern part of South America. We were near the Orinoco River. This wasn't part of our plan at all. The ship was badly damaged, and we couldn't continue to Africa. The captain suggested going back to repair the ship, but I didn't agree. I thought we should try to reach Barbados instead. After talking about it, we decided to head to Barbados to fix the ship there. Before we reached Barbados, another hurricane hit us. It came in the evening, and the wind was very strong. The waves grew bigger and bigger. One of the men suddenly shouted, "Land!" But when he shouted, the ship stopped moving. The water wasn't deep enough for the ship to keep going. This was bad news because our ship was already broken, and now it might break completely. We realized we had to get off the ship quickly. We used a small boat to escape. It was very dangerous because the boat was too small for 17 men, but we had no choice. If we stayed on the ship, we would all die. So we climbed onto the small boat. The waves were huge, and the wind pushed us toward big rocks. We knew we were going to crash soon. Suddenly, a giant wave came and overturned the boat. I fell into the water and couldn't breathe. I couldn't see anyone else or the boat. For a moment, I thought I was going to die. Then my head came above the water, and I could breathe again. I looked around and saw a small beach between the rocks. Another big wave pushed me toward the beach. I felt land under my feet, but my body was weak. I tried to stand up and move further from the water before another wave came, but I was too slow. Another wave pulled me back into the sea. I couldn't breathe for a while, but then another wave threw me onto the beach again. This time, I managed to crawl about 10 meters away from the water. I collapsed on the sand and didn't move for a long time. When I finally got up, I looked for the others. I called out their names, but I couldn't find anyone. It seemed like I was the only person alive. All I found were 3 hats and 2 shoes on the beach. It was a horrible sight. Chapter 8. Island, I was probably the only person still alive. All my friends from the ship were gone. On the beach, I found 3 hats and 2 shoes. It was a sad sight. The weather was still bad, but the waves weren't as big anymore. I could see the ship far away from the land. I looked around me. I didn't have much. My clothes were wet, and I had no extra ones. I had nothing to eat or drink. The only thing I had was a small knife I found in my pocket. The situation was terrible. How could I survive with just a little knife? First, I needed fresh water. I walked along the beach until I found a small river. I drank the water. It felt good, but I was scared of dangerous animals. To protect myself, I made a weapon out of a piece of wood. That night, I slept in a large tree. I didn't feel safe on the ground. The next morning, I woke up early. The sea was calm now. I decided to swim back to the ship to get some things. I swam carefully and climbed onto the ship. At first, I couldn't find a way inside. I swam around it twice until I saw a rope hanging on one side. I used the rope to climb up. The ship was empty, but I found some food that was still dry. I also found a bottle of rum. I took the bottle with me. Then I heard something. Someone or something was on the ship. I was scared. My friends were all dead, so who could it be? I went to check. It turned out to be a dog, the captain's dog. I was so happy. Now I wasn't alone anymore. I had a friend. I wanted to take the food, rum, and the dog back to the beach, but I didn't have a small boat. I had to make a raft. I found some wood on the ship and tied it together with ropes. I also looked for clothes and tools. I found a box with tools, a nice carpet, 4 guns, and dry gunpowder. I put everything on the raft and pushed it toward the beach. When I got back, I started looking for a place to stay. I saw a hill and thought it would be a good spot to see more of the island. I took a gun and climbed to the top. From there, I could see the sea all around me. I realized I was on an island. I saw 2 small islands nearby, one to the north and one to the west. Far to the south, I saw a big land, about 100 kilometers away. To the east, there was only the ocean. I didn't see any signs of people on the island, just wild animals. Chapter 9. Tent. When I returned from the hill, I saw many birds along the way. They were strange to me, and I didn't know their names. I wondered if their meat would be good to eat. To test this, I killed one bird and cooked it. But the taste was bad, so I decided not to eat these birds again. I went back to the beach where my raft was. I started moving all my things further inland. I wanted to bring everything closer to a safer place. The next day, I planned to go back to the ship again. I needed to take all the useful things from the ship before another storm came and destroyed it. That night, I made a small tent near the beach. It wasn't big, but it was enough to keep me safe from rain and sun. I brought everything that could be damaged by water or heat inside the tent. I used some clothes to make a soft place to sleep on the ground. I also put 2 guns next to my left shoulder and 2 more next to my right shoulder. Having guns around me made me feel safer. After a long day of work, I was tired and fell asleep quickly. The next morning, I swam back to the ship. This time, I made a second raft. I loaded it with many important things: 7 new guns, some beds, and other tools. I carefully brought everything back to the beach. The next day, I went to the ship again. I found more useful items like candles and 2 big boxes of tea. These would be helpful on the island. I kept visiting the ship over and over. One day, I discovered a locked box. Under the box, I found a key. When I opened the box, I saw coins from Europe and Brazil. Money wasn't useful on the island, but I took it anyway. I also found playing cards with pictures of kings, queens, and other people. These cards made me happy because I could use them to pass the time. One afternoon, dark clouds filled the sky. The wind grew stronger, and I knew a storm was coming. I didn't have time to make another raft, so I swam back to the beach as fast as I could. That night, the storm hit hard. Luckily, I was safe inside my tent. The next morning, I looked out and saw that the ship was gone. It had broken apart during the storm. Now I knew I might stay on the island for a long time. I needed to make a better place to live. I thought about finding a cave or building a stronger tent. My new home had to meet certain needs. It had to be close to fresh water, in the shade, easy to protect, and near the sea so I could see ships passing by. After searching for a while, I found a good spot next to a big hill. The hill gave me protection. On one side, I built a fence around the other sides. There was no door in the fence. I used a ladder to climb over it. This made my home safer. I moved all my things inside the fenced area. I had more ideas in mind. I built 2 tents, one big and one small. The smaller tent was inside the bigger one. The bigger tent protected my food and gunpowder from rain, while the smaller tent became my living space. Life felt a little better now. Chapter 10. Calendar. When the tents were finished, I started digging a cave at the bottom of the hill. I wanted to use the cave to store food and other things. I brought stones and dirt from the cave to build a terrace inside the fence. This made my camp stronger and safer. One day, while I was still working on the cave, a storm came. There was a lot of lightning during the storm. I thought about the gunpowder I had stored in big boxes. If lightning hit one of those boxes, it could explode and destroy everything. It might even kill me. I was very scared. As soon as the storm ended, I opened the boxes with the gunpowder. I divided the gunpowder into smaller bags and hid them in different places among the rocks. This took me 3 days, but it made me feel much safer. Every day I hunted animals for food. It gave me a break from hard work, and it also helped me learn more about the island and its animals. I discovered goats and started hunting them. After some time, I had enough meat to eat. But sometimes I felt sad. I missed my wife, my friends in Brazil, and my family in England. I thought about how traveling by sea had changed my life completely. It could bring great adventures, but it could also bring terrible dangers. I knew I was lucky to be alive after everything that happened. I decided to make a big cross out of wood. I put it on the beach near the place where I first arrived on the island. On the cross, I wrote the date of my arrival, September 30th, 1659. This cross became my calendar. Every day I made a small cut on the cross to mark the passing days. The 7th cut was longer. It marked the end of the week. At the start of each month, I made an even longer cut. This way I could keep track of time. Sometimes I had negative thoughts about my situation. I was alone on the island with no one to talk to. I thought about how unlikely it was that I would ever see England again. But then I reminded myself of the good things in my life. I was alive, safe, and free. I had food to eat and shelter to protect me. I didn't have many clothes, but I didn't need them on the island. I also had my dog, who understood some words like sit, come here, bring it, and don't do it. He was a good companion. To stay positive, I made a list of all the good and bad things in my life. Writing this list helped me focus on the positives. Life wasn't perfect, but I had learned to appreciate what I had. I kept improving my camp, making it better and better. I worked on expanding the cave so I could organize all my things properly. Chapter 11. Book after. I finished making my cave bigger. I decided to start building furniture. I needed a chair and a table. Using wood from the rafts and pieces of the ship, I worked hard to make them. It took me 5 days to finish the chair and table. I was proud of my work, but I didn't stop there. Inside the cave, I made shelves to store my tools and other things. I hung my guns on the walls so they were easy to reach if I needed them. With everything organized, I felt like my camp was becoming a real home. But something was still missing. I wanted to write about my life on the island. I thought it would help me remember everything that happened and keep track of my thoughts. So I decided to write a book about my days here. I started with the first day I arrived on the island. I wrote down everything I could remember, what I did, how I felt, and what I learned. At first, I wrote 1 page every day. But as time passed and my days became more similar, I only wrote 1 page each week. I focused on important events or new discoveries. Even though my days often followed the same routine, they were never boring. Every morning I walked around the island for a few hours. Then I worked until noon. After lunch, I rested for 2 hours because the sun was too hot. In the evening, I continued working until dark. Sometimes I worked on expanding my cave. Other times, I fixed my fence or made new tools. Writing in my book gave me a way to think about my life. It helped me see both the good and bad parts of living on the island. For example, I missed my family and friends, and I wished I could talk to someone. But at the same time, I had food, shelter, and even animals like my dog and goats. My parrot, Pole, kept me company too. He learned to say his name and a few other words, which always made me smile. One day, while writing, I realized that I should try to catch more goats. I already had some, but I wanted more so I wouldn't run out of meat when my gunpowder was gone. This idea led me to think about taming wild goats. I came up near a group of goats with my dog. I told him to sit and wait quietly. Then I slowly moved around the goats to scare them toward my dog. When one goat came close enough, I jumped and grabbed its leg. But the goat kicked me in the nose. It hurt badly, and I had to let it go. That plan didn't work, but I knew I'd find another way. As the months went by, I kept adding to my book. Writing helped me feel less lonely. It also reminded me of how much I had accomplished since arriving on the island. I wasn't just surviving, I was learning to live well. By the end of the year, my book had grown thick with pages filled with stories, thoughts, and plans for the future. Chapter 12. Corn after the earthquake. I started to think more about food. I knew I needed to grow my own crops if I wanted to survive. For a long time on the island. One day while I was working on my fence, I found an old bag. It was small and had some dust and leaves inside. At first I didn't think much of it. I emptied the bag because I needed it to store gunpowder. But a month later, something amazing happened. I went back to the same spot where I had emptied the bag, and I saw green leaves growing there. They were young corn plants. I couldn't believe my eyes. Corn was something I could use to make bread, and bread was something I missed very much. I felt so happy that I almost cried. This was a gift from God, I thought. Now I had a chance to grow my own food. I decided to plant the seeds carefully. I didn't want to waste any of them, so I only used half of what I found. I put the seeds into the ground near my cave. Every day I watered them and checked on their growth. But after a while, I realized that none of the seeds were growing well. Something was wrong. Maybe the soil wasn't good, or maybe I planted them at the wrong time. I didn't give up. I still had the other half of the seeds left. This time, I waited for the rainy season to start before planting them. The rain would help the seeds grow better. When the rains came, I planted the rest of the seeds, and this time they grew. The plants became tall and strong. I was so excited. Soon I had a small farm on my island. The seasons on the island were different from England. In England, we had spring, summer, autumn, and winter. But here there were 2 rainy seasons and 2 dry seasons every year. I learned to plan my planting around these seasons. For example, I planted the corn just before the rainy season began. This way, the plants got enough water to grow strong. As the corn grew, I noticed that wild goats and rabbits were eating the young plants. I didn't want to lose my corn, so I built a fence around the area. The fence kept the animals away. At night, I even put my dog inside the fence to guard the plants. He barked loudly whenever an animal came close. But the trouble didn't stop there. Birds started to eat the seeds, too. I had to stay awake and watch the field until all the birds were gone. Sometimes I shot at them to scare them away. Finally, the plants grew tall enough, and the seeds were safe. By the end of December, I harvested my first corn. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to save the seeds for next year. I decided not to eat the corn right away. My goal was to plant more seeds and grow even more corn the next year. But I also thought about making bread. To do that, I needed pots to cook with. I remembered seeing clay around the island, so I decided to try making pots myself. At first, I wasn't very good at it. The pots I made broke easily, but I didn't give up. I kept trying, and after 2 months, I finally made 2 large pots that were strong enough to use. I also made smaller pots for storing things like salt. To make salt, I filled the pots with seawater and let the sun dry them. When the water evaporated, I had salt left behind. Next, I needed a tool to grind the corn into flour. I took a big piece of hard wood and carved a hole in it. Then I used another piece of wood to crush the corn kernels into powder. The flour stayed at the bottom of the hole. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Finally, I was ready to bake bread. I mixed the flour with water and shaped it into flat pieces. Then, I heated 2 stones near the fire. When the stones were very hot, I placed the bread between them. It wasn't as good as the bread I used to eat in England, but it was still delicious. After so many years without bread, this felt like a feast. Making bread gave me hope. I realized that I could live on the island for a long time if I kept learning and working hard. I also thought about traveling around the island by sea. Maybe I could explore more places and find new resources. To do that, I needed a canoe. I found a big tree in the forest and started cutting it down. Once the tree fell, I began carving a hole in the trunk to make a canoe. It took me many days of hard work, but when the canoe was finished, I faced a new problem. I didn't know how to move it to the beach. There was a hill between the forest and the sea, and the canoe was too heavy to carry. I tried everything. I even thought about digging a channel to bring the canoe to the water, but it was impossible. In the end, I had to leave the canoe in the forest. All that work was wasted, and I felt very sad. I promised myself to plan better next time. Chapter 13. Dream. One night I had a very strange dream. It was so vivid that it felt real while I was asleep. In the dream, I was in a pub. But this wasn't just any pub, it was on my island. I sat at a table and wanted to drink some rum. A waitress was there, but she didn't do anything. She just sat at the bar, being lazy. I didn't like her attitude, so I waited impatiently. Then, something unexpected happened. My wife walked into the pub. She came over to me and handed me a piece of paper. On it, there was a message from her father. He wrote, "Come home. You have to work on the plantations." But I didn't want to go back. I ignored the note and went to the kitchen instead. In the kitchen, I found my mother. She was cooking steaks and making soup. I tasted the soup, and it was amazing, so delicious that I wanted more. Then, two Englishmen entered the pub. They were trying to sell gunpowder. One of them looked like a gentleman, but the other one seemed rough and unpleasant. I told the rough man, "I'm sorry. I don't need your gunpowder. I already have plenty of gunpowder in my camp." The man got angry. "What do you mean?" he shouted. "Our gunpowder is good. We traveled all the way from London to sell it to you." I replied, "Thank you, but I still don't want it." The man became furious. He started saying bad things about me, and I said bad things back. Our argument grew worse until he tried to kill me. He pulled out his gun and shot at me. That's when I woke up. When I opened my eyes, I felt confused. Was it really just a dream? It felt so real. For the next week, I stayed weak and tired. I couldn't get out of bed or do much work. All I could do was rest and sleep. My body needed time to recover. By August, I started feeling better. I wasn't fully strong yet, but I knew I had to move around more. So I decided to take long walks around the island. These walks helped me feel healthier and stronger. Slowly, I regained my energy. During one of these walks, I discovered a new part of the island. It was a beautiful valley with a lake in the middle. The valley had melons, grapes, apples, oranges, and lemons. The fruit was sweet and fresh. I picked some and planned to bring them back to my cave. But when I returned later with a big bag, I found that wild animals had eaten most of the fruit I left behind. Even though the animals ate my fruit, I still loved the valley. It was peaceful and full of life. I thought about moving there, but I realized I needed to stay close to the beach. If a ship ever passed by, I wanted to be able to see it and signal for help. Chapter 14. Footsteps. By the end of August, I was feeling much stronger. I decided to take another walk around the island. This time, I went to the western side of the beach. The weather was clear, and the sea sparkled under the sun. As I walked along the shore, I noticed something unusual in the sand. At first, I thought it was just a rock or a piece of driftwood. But when I looked closer, my heart stopped. It was a human footprint. I stared at the footprint for a long time. It was fresh, and it looked like someone had been there recently. My mind raced with questions. Who could it be? Was it a friend or an enemy? I didn't know anyone else on the island, so how was this possible? I felt scared and confused. What if pirates were nearby? What if they came to hurt me? I looked around carefully, but I didn't see anyone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone might be watching me. I quickly ran back to my camp. When I got there, I checked everything to make sure it was safe. I climbed up the hill near my cave and looked out over the island. From there, I could see far into the distance. There was no sign of people, but I couldn't relax. For the next 3 days, I stayed inside my fence. I didn't leave my camp, not even to hunt or gather food. I kept thinking about the footprint. Every sound made me jump. Was it a bird? A goat? Or was it someone coming to harm me? I couldn't sleep well at night. My dog stayed close to me, which made me feel a little safer. On the 4th day, I decided I couldn't stay hidden forever. I needed food, and I also wanted to find answers. So, I took 2 guns with me and went back to the beach where I had seen the footprint. I looked carefully at the sand. There was only one footprint, but it was clear and deep. It wasn't made by a wild animal. It was definitely human. I followed the direction of the footprint to see if I could find more clues. After walking for a while, I saw more footprints. They led me to a small forest. In the forest, I found signs of a fire. Someone had built a fire here, and it looked like they had been cooking food. There were bones and shells left behind. I realized that whoever made these footprints had been living on the island, too. Now I had even more questions. How long had they been here? Were they still nearby? Did they know about me? I felt nervous, but I also felt curious. Maybe they were friendly. Maybe they could help me escape the island. But I couldn't be sure, so I decided to stay cautious. When I returned to my camp, I started making plans to protect myself. First, I moved my tent further inside the cave. I covered the entrance with bushes and branches so it wouldn't be easy to find. Then, I dug a new hole outside the fence to hide my gunpowder. If anyone came near my camp, they wouldn't find my weapons easily. I also trained my dog to bark louder when he heard strange noises. He was already good at guarding, but now I wanted him to warn me even faster. Pole, my parrot, stayed inside the cave. She was noisy sometimes, and I didn't want her to give away my location. For weeks, I stayed alert. Every morning, I checked the beach for new footprints. Every evening, I climbed the hill to look for smoke from fires. But I didn't see or hear anything unusual. The island seemed quiet again. Still, I couldn't forget about the footprints. They reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore. One day, I thought about building a boat. If I had a boat, I could explore the island better and maybe find the person who left the footprints. I also thought about leaving messages on the beach in case they came back. But I wasn't ready to do any of those things yet. First, I needed to feel safe again. Chapter 15. Basket. After building my second house in the Fruit Valley, I started making longer trips around the island. These trips helped me discover new places and gather more food. But carrying everything back to my camp was difficult because I didn't have a proper basket. My hands could only hold so much, and I often had to make multiple trips. That's when I decided to make a basket. I went into the forest and cut branches from the same type of tree I used for my fences. These branches were strong and flexible, perfect for weaving. I dried them in the sun for a few days until they were ready to use. Then, I started weaving the branches together. At first, it was hard because I didn't know how to make a basket properly. The first few attempts fell apart, but I didn't give up. I kept trying, and after a lot of practice, I finally made a strong and sturdy basket. With my new basket, I could carry much more food during my trips. It made life easier. One day, I decided to take a long journey around the island. I packed my basket with tools, food, and water. As I walked, I discovered new parts of the island I hadn't seen before. There were grassy fields filled with flowers that smelled sweet. Butterflies flew around, some with wings as wide as 10 centimeters. They were colorful, yellow, blue, and orange. It was beautiful. Near the fields, I found small trees with nuts. These nuts were different from the ones I knew in England. They were sweeter and had a strange shape. I collected as many as my basket could hold. I also saw new animals, parrots, rabbits, and even gray cats. I caught one parrot and took it home with me. Its feathers were bright and colorful, red, green, purple, orange, blue, pink, and yellow. It became a new companion for me and my dog. On the way back, my dog caught a young goat. I saved the goat and brought it home with me. I thought about keeping goats again. This time I had a better plan. I built a larger fenced area near my camp where the goats could live. It took me 3 months to finish the fence, but it was worth it. The goats had plenty of grass and water, and soon they felt safe and calm. In 2 years, I had 12 goats. By the third year, I had more than 20. They gave me milk, meat, and even cheese and butter. Life felt richer with so many animals around me. But something was still missing. I missed talking to people. Even though I had my parrot, Pole, who could say my name and a few other words, it wasn't the same as having real conversations. Sometimes I would sit quietly and think about my family in England. I wondered if they were looking at the same moon and stars as me. These thoughts made me feel connected to them, even though we were far apart. One day, while walking on the beach, I noticed something strange. There was a mark in the sand, a human footprint. At first I thought it might be mine, but when I looked closer I realized it was much bigger. My heart raced. Who could it be? Was someone else on the island? I felt scared and confused. I ran back to my house and stayed inside for days. Every sound outside made me jump. I couldn't sleep at night. My mind was full of questions. What if pirates were nearby? What if they came to hurt me? Finally, I decided to go back to the beach and look at the footprint again. It was still there, clear and fresh. I knew it wasn't my imagination. Someone had been on the island. I started thinking about how to protect myself. I made another fence around my house, stronger this time. I also dug holes in the fence where I could shoot through if anyone attacked me. My house was now like a fortress. Nobody could come close without me knowing. Despite my fear, I tried to stay calm. Maybe the person who left the footprint wouldn't return. Maybe it was just a one-time visit. I told myself not to worry too much. But deep down, I knew things on the island were changing. I wasn't alone anymore. Chapter 16. Bread. By the end of December, my corn was ready to harvest. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to save the seeds for the next planting season. I didn't want to eat any of it yet, because I needed more corn for the future. My goal was to grow even more so I could have enough to make bread. But first, I needed tools to grind the corn into flour. I decided to make pots out of clay. At first, I wasn't very good at it. The pots I made were rough and often cracked when I tried to use them. But I didn't give up. I kept practicing until I figured out how to make stronger pots. After 2 months of hard work, I finally made 2 large pots that were strong enough to hold water and food. I also made smaller pots for storing things like salt. To make salt, I filled the pots with seawater and left them in the sun. When the water dried up, I had salt left behind. This was helpful because salt made my food taste better and lasted longer. I also discovered that firing the pots in a hot fire made them harder and more durable. I used this method to improve all my pots. Next, I needed a way to turn my corn into flour. I took a big piece of hard wood and carved a hole into it. Then I used another piece of wood to crush the corn kernels into powder. The flour stayed at the bottom of the hole. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough for me. Now I was ready to bake bread. I mixed the flour with water and shaped it into flat pieces. To bake the bread, I heated 2 stones near the fire. When the stones were very hot, I placed the bread between them. The bread wasn't as good as the bread I used to eat in England, but it was still delicious. After so many years without bread, this felt like a feast. Making bread gave me hope. I realized that I could live on the island for a long time if I kept learning and working hard. I also thought about traveling around the island by sea. Maybe I could explore more places and find new resources. To do that, I needed a canoe. I found a big tree in the forest and started cutting it down. Once the tree fell, I began carving a hole in the trunk to make a canoe. It took me many days of hard work. But when the canoe was finished, I faced a new problem. I didn't know how to move it to the beach. There was a hill between the forest and the sea, and the canoe was too heavy to carry. I tried everything. I even thought about digging a channel to bring the canoe to the water. But it was impossible. In the end, I had to leave the canoe in the forest. All that work was wasted, and I felt very sad. I promised myself to plan better next time. Chapter 17. Canoe. During my 4th year on the island, my clothes were old and falling apart. I needed new ones to protect myself from the sun and rain. I started using animal skins to make clothes. First, I made a cap to keep the sun off my head. Then I made a short jacket and trousers. These clothes worked well. They kept me cool during the day and protected me from heavy rain. But I still needed something else to shield me from the strong sun. That's when I decided to make an umbrella. Making the umbrella wasn't easy. I had to find the right materials and figure out how to put them together. It took me many tries, but eventually I made one that worked. The umbrella was big enough to cover me, and it helped me stay dry and cool. I was proud of my work. Life on the island felt a little better now that I had proper clothes and an umbrella. For the next 5 years, life continued as usual. I hunted, cooked, and worked on improving my camp. I also thought about traveling around the island by sea. To do that, I needed a canoe. I remembered my first attempt at making a canoe. It was too big and I couldn't move it to the water. This time, I decided to make a smaller one that would be easier to handle. I found a big tree near the forest and started cutting it down. Once the tree fell, I began carving a hole in the trunk to make the canoe. It took me weeks of hard work, but finally, it was ready. I tested it near the beach, and it floated perfectly. I was so happy. I could now use the canoe to explore the island. Before setting out, I packed everything I might need. I brought food, water, tools, and my guns. I wanted to be prepared for anything. On June the 6th, During my 6th year on the island, I started my journey. At first, things went well. I paddled along the coast, enjoying the view of the island from the sea. But then, trouble came. As I tried to go back to the shore, I noticed a strong current pulling me away from the island. I panicked. If the current took me too far, I wouldn't have enough food or water to survive. I fought hard against the current for 2 hours, using all my strength to paddle back toward the island. Finally, I managed to escape the current and get closer to land. I was exhausted, but relieved to be safe. After resting for a while, I continued my trip. I discovered a small river that went deep into the island. I paddled up the river, hoping to find something interesting. But soon, the river became too narrow and rocks blocked my way. I couldn't go any further, so I got out of the canoe and explored the area on foot. To my surprise, I found a path that led back to my house in the valley. When I arrived home, I was greeted by a familiar voice. "Robinson! Where are you, Robinson?" It was Pole, my parrot. He had learned to say my name and repeat phrases I often used. Hearing him talk made me smile. It was like having someone to talk to after so many years alone. I stayed home for a while after that trip, focusing on making tools, pots, and baskets. I even got better at weaving baskets, which helped me carry more things during my walks. Chapter 18. Foot. It had been 11 years since I first arrived on the island. Life was going well, but one day something strange happened. I noticed that I didn't have much gunpowder left. This worried me because I needed it to hunt animals for food. My old goat was very old now, and it was too late to find a mate for her. I wanted meat, but I didn't have the heart to kill her. One day she died naturally, and I felt sad about losing her. With less and less gunpowder, I knew I had to find another way to get food. I decided to make traps. At first I wasn't successful, but after many tries I caught 3 young goats, 1 male and 2 females. I brought them back to my camp and kept them inside a small fenced area. But the space was too small for all 3 goats, so I built a bigger fence around a large area. It took me 3 months to finish the fence, but it was worth it. The goats had plenty of grass and water, and they soon became calm and friendly. They even ate out of my hand. In 2 years, I had 12 goats. By the 3rd year, I had more than 20. These goats gave me milk, meat, and even cheese and butter. My table was full now, and I had many animals around me. My old dog, the goats, and Pole, my parrot. The only thing I still missed was having someone to talk to. One day I went to the part of the beach where the strong current was. On the way, I thought about how strange I must look. I wore a big hat, a short jacket, and trousers made from animal skin. I didn't have socks or shoes, but I wrapped goat skins around my feet. I carried 2 belts, one for my gun and knife, and the other for my gunpowder. I also carried a basket on my back and held an umbrella above my head. My beard was very long. I realized that life on the island had changed me into a completely different person. When I reached the beach, I noticed something unusual, a human footprint in the sand. It was clear and fresh, and it looked much bigger than my own foot. My heart raced. Who could it be? Was someone else on the island? I felt scared and confused. I ran back to my house as fast as I could. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking about the footprint. Was it real? Or was I imagining things? The next morning I went back to the beach to look at the footprint again. It was still there, clear and deep. It wasn't mine. It was much bigger. I was terrified. What if pirates were nearby? What if they came to hurt me? I decided to hide. My activity on the island. I destroyed my cornfields and covered up any signs that I lived there. For weeks I stayed inside my house, too scared to go outside. Finally, I started feeling a little better. Maybe the person who left the footprint wouldn't come back. Maybe it was just a one-time visit. But I still wanted to protect myself. Over the next month, I built another fence around my house. I also made holes in the fence where I could shoot through if anyone attacked me. My house was now like a fortress. Nobody could come close without me knowing. I also worried about my goats. To keep them safe, I divided them into two groups. I built a second fence in another part of the island and moved half of the goats there. It took a lot of time, but I felt better knowing my animals were safer. Years passed, and life went on. One sad day, my old dog died. He had been with me for so long, and I cried for 3 days. I went to my goats and told them how sad I was. They didn't understand my words, but they seemed to feel my sadness. They stayed unusually quiet and calm. 2 years after finding the footprint, I was walking on the beach again. Suddenly, I saw something shocking. The sand was covered with parts of human bodies, heads, hands, feet, fingers, and teeth. There was also a black spot where a fire had been. My stomach turned. I felt angry and scared at the same time. Who could do such a thing? I realized these must be cannibals, people who eat other humans. I didn't know what to do. Should I fight them? Should I hide? I decided not to use my canoe because I couldn't fight a group of cannibals in the open sea. I also stopped using my guns because the sound might attract attention. Instead, I always kept my guns with me for protection. I started looking for a place near the beach where I could hide and prepare to attack if necessary. But then I changed my mind. Maybe it wasn't right to fight them. I didn't know these people and they hadn't attacked me yet. I decided to act only if they attacked me first. Chapter 19. Cannibals. It had been 16 years since I first arrived on the island. Life was going well, but I still felt lonely. One day, while walking on the beach, I saw something shocking. The sand was covered with parts of human bodies, heads, hands, feet, fingers, and teeth. There was also a black spot where a fire had been. My stomach turned and I felt both angry and scared. Who could do such a thing? I realized these must be cannibals, people who eat other humans. I didn't know what to do. Should I fight them? Should I hide? I decided not to use my canoe because I couldn't fight a group of cannibals in the open sea. I also stopped using my guns because the sound might attract attention. Instead, I always kept my guns with me for protection. I started looking for a place near the beach where I could hide and prepare to attack if necessary. But then I changed my mind. Maybe it wasn't right to fight them. I didn't know these people and they hadn't attacked me yet. I decided to act only if they attacked me first. For the next 2 years, I stayed careful and alert. Every morning, I checked the beach for signs of cannibals. Every evening, I climbed the hill near my cave to look for smoke from fires, but I didn't see or hear anything unusual. The island seemed quiet again. Still, I couldn't forget about the footprints and the remains on the beach. They reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore. One night, after a big storm, something happened that disturbed me. I heard the sound of a gun at sea. I ran out of my house and saw a light coming from the ocean. A second shot followed. I thought it might be a ship in danger asking for help. I quickly gathered dry wood and made a big fire on the beach. They probably saw the fire because they fired again. I thought, tonight I will speak to someone. This is great. I kept the fire burning until midnight, but no one came to my beach. It was strange and confusing. Maybe in the morning I would understand more. The next day, I saw a ship far from the shore. It looked empty and abandoned. I took my canoe and paddled out to investigate. When I got closer, I found a dog on board. He was very happy to see me. I gave him bread and water. He was hungry and extremely thirsty. But there were no people on the ship. What happened to the men? I didn't have an answer. It was a mystery. I searched the ship and found many useful things. There were boxes filled with bottles of alcohol, guns, gunpowder, shirts, shoes, gold, and silver. On the island, gunpowder was more valuable than money, so I took as much as I could carry. I hid everything in my cave and made several trips back to the ship to collect more supplies. Afterward, life returned to normal, but I often thought about the missing sailors and the cannibals on the beach. One night, I had a dream. In the dream, 2 canoes full of cannibals landed on the beach. One of their prisoners escaped and ran to my house. I saved him and he became my friend. He helped me navigate the dangerous waters around the island. When I woke up, The dream stayed in my mind. I realized that with someone's help, it might be possible to escape from the island. Maybe I could save one of the prisoners of the cannibals. Decided to watch the beach more closely. For the next 2 years, I walked along the shore every day, hoping to see the canoes. Finally, one afternoon, I saw 5 canoes with more than 30 men on the beach. I couldn't attack so many men, so I waited and watched through my telescope. The visitors made a fire and started dancing around it. I also saw 2 prisoners tied up. One of them was beaten and killed, and the cannibals painted their bodies with his blood. It was horrible to watch, but I couldn't do anything. There were too many cannibals. The second prisoner waited on the side. When the cannibals weren't looking, he jumped up and started running toward me. He was fast, but 2 cannibals were chasing him. This was my chance to save him. Chapter 20. Cave. After seeing the cannibals on the beach, I decided to be more careful. I wanted to hide my activities so they wouldn't find me. I tried not to make any noise, and I was especially careful when making fires. Fire was important because I needed it to cook food, but smoke could rise high into the sky and be seen from far away. To avoid this, I made small fires that didn't create much smoke. One day, while exploring the forest near the beach, I found a small cave. It looked like a good place to hide if I ever needed to escape quickly. I went inside, but when my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw 2 glowing eyes staring back at me. I jumped out of the cave, scared to death. My heart was racing. I waited outside for a while, but nothing happened. Slowly, I went back to the entrance of the cave and listened carefully. I heard a faint sound, like someone or something was hurt inside. I grabbed my gun and stepped into the cave again. This time, I moved very slowly. When my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw an old goat lying on the ground. It was dying. I felt sorry for the poor animal, but there was nothing I could do to help it. The next day I returned to the cave and found that the goat had passed away. I looked around the cave and realized it was a safe place. It was hidden and quiet, perfect for storing things. I started bringing some of my guns and gunpowder to the cave. If the cannibals ever came near my house, I could use the cave as a hiding spot. By this time, I had been on the island for 23 years. Life was comfortable, and I had many animals around me. Pole, my parrot, could say my name and other words very clearly. I even taught 2 more parrots to repeat my name. I also had over 30 goats, which gave me plenty of milk, meat, cheese, and butter. One morning, I was walking to my fields when I saw something unusual: fire on the beach. I immediately ran back to my house and prepared all my guns. Then I took my telescope and went closer to the beach. I hid myself behind some bushes and watched what was happening. I saw 9 naked men with 2 canoes. They seemed to be waiting for the tide to rise so they could leave. When they finally left, I went to the beach. It was covered with blood and bones again. Seeing this made me very angry. I told myself that if I ever saw the cannibals again, I would kill as many of them as possible. But they didn't return for a long time. One evening, after a big storm, something strange happened. I heard the sound of a gun coming from the sea. I ran out of my house and saw a light in the distance. A second shot followed. I thought it might be a ship in trouble asking for help. I quickly gathered dry wood and made a big fire on the beach. They probably saw my fire because they fired another shot. I thought, tonight, I will speak to somebody. This is great. I kept the fire burning until midnight, but no one came to my beach. It was confusing. Maybe I would understand more in the morning. The next day, I saw the ship. It was far from the shore and looked empty. I couldn't understand why no one came to the beach. I really wanted to talk to someone. I missed communicating with real people. I took my canoe and paddled out to the ship. When I got closer, I saw a dog on board. He was very happy to see me. I gave him bread and water. He was hungry and extremely thirsty. But there were no people on the ship. What happened to the crew? I didn't know, and it was a mystery. I searched the ship and found many useful things. There were boxes filled with bottles of alcohol, guns, gunpowder, shirts, shoes, gold, and silver. On the island, gunpowder was more valuable than money, so I took as much as I could carry. I hid everything in my cave and made several trips back to the ship to collect more supplies. Afterward, life returned to normal. Time passed quickly, and I often thought about the missing sailors and the cannibals on the beach. One night in March, I had a dream. In the dream, 2 canoes full of cannibals landed on the beach. One of their prisoners escaped and ran to my house. I saved him, and he became my friend. He helped me navigate the dangerous waters around the island. When I woke up, the dream stayed in my mind. I realized that with someone's help, it might be possible to escape from the island. Maybe I could save one of the prisoners of the cannibals. I decided to watch the beach more closely. For the next 2 years, I walked along the shore every day, hoping to see the canoes. Finally, one afternoon, I saw 5 canoes with more than 30 men on the beach. I couldn't attack so many men, so I waited and watched through my telescope. The visitors made a fire and started dancing around it. I also saw 2 prisoners tied up. One of them was beaten and killed, and the cannibals painted their bodies with his blood. It was horrible to watch, but I couldn't do anything. There were too many cannibals. The second prisoner waited on the side. When the cannibals weren't looking, he jumped up and started running toward me. He was fast, but two cannibals were chasing him. This was my chance to save him. Chapter 21. Visitors. One night after a big storm, something strange happened. I heard the sound of a gun coming from the sea. I ran out of my house and saw a light far away in the ocean. A second shot followed. I thought it might be a ship in trouble asking for help. Quickly, I gathered dry wood and made a big fire on the beach. The people on the ship probably saw my fire because they fired another shot. I thought, tonight, I will finally speak to someone. This is great. I kept the fire burning until midnight, but no one came to my beach. It was confusing. Maybe I would understand more in the morning. The next day, I saw the ship. It was far from the shore and looked empty. I didn't understand why no one came to the beach. I really wanted to talk to someone. I missed communicating with real people so much. I took my canoe and paddled out to the ship to investigate. When I got closer, I saw a dog on board. He was very happy to see me. I gave him bread and water. He was hungry and extremely thirsty. But there were no people on the ship. What happened to the sailors? I didn't have an answer. It was a mystery. I searched the ship and found many useful things. There were boxes filled with bottles of alcohol, guns, gunpowder, shirts, shoes, gold, and silver. On the island, gunpowder was more valuable than money, so I took as much as I could carry. I hid everything in my cave and made several trips back to the ship to collect more supplies. Afterward, life returned to normal. Time passed quickly, and I often thought about the missing sailors and the cannibals on the beach. One night in March, I had a dream. In the dream, two canoes full of cannibals landed on the beach. One of their prisoners escaped and ran to my house. I saved him, and he became my friend. He helped me navigate the dangerous waters around the island. When I woke up, the dream stayed in my mind. I realized that with someone's help, it might be possible to escape from the island. Maybe I could save one of the prisoners of the cannibals. I decided to watch the beach more closely. For the next 2 years, I walked along the shore every day, hoping to see the canoes. Finally, one afternoon, I saw 5 canoes with more than 30 men on the beach. I couldn't attack so many men, so I waited and watched through my telescope. The visitors made a fire and started dancing around it. I also saw 2 prisoners tied up. One of them was beaten and killed, and the cannibals painted their bodies with his blood. It was horrible to watch, but I couldn't do anything. There were too many cannibals. The second prisoner waited on the side. When the cannibals weren't looking, he jumped up and started running toward me. He was fast, but 2 cannibals were chasing him. This was my chance to save him. Chapter 22. Friday. The prisoner was running fast toward me, but the two cannibals were close behind. I had to act quickly. I grabbed my gun and ran out from my hiding place. When I got closer, I saw that the prisoner was young and strong. He looked scared but determined to escape. The cannibals were shouting and chasing him, but they didn't see me at first. I raised my gun and aimed carefully. I didn't want to miss. When I was sure of my shot, I fired. One of the cannibals fell to the ground, dead. The other one stopped running and looked around, confused. He saw me and started running back toward the beach. I fired again, and he also fell to the ground. Both cannibals were dead. The prisoner stopped running when he heard the gunshots. He turned around and saw me standing there. At first he looked shocked, but then he smiled. He came closer and fell to his knees in front of me. He touched my feet and kissed them. It was his way of thanking me for saving his life. I helped him stand up and pointed to my house. I wanted him to come with me so we could talk more. When we got to my house, I gave him food and water. He was very hungry and thirsty. I also gave him some clothes because he wasn't wearing anything. He tried them on, and they fit well. Then I showed him how to use a knife and spoon. He watched me carefully and copied everything I did. He was smart and learned quickly. Over time, I taught him many things. I showed him how to make bread, milk the goats, and even speak a little English. I called him Friday because I saved him on a Friday. He became my friend and helper. For the first time in years, I had someone to talk to and share my days with. Friday told me about his life before he was captured by the cannibals. He said he lived with his family far away. They were peaceful people who didn't eat humans like the cannibals did. He missed his home and his family very much. I promised him that one day I would help him go back to his people. One morning we saw 3 canoes on the beach. There were 17 cannibals, and they had brought 2 prisoners with them. One of the prisoners was an old man, and the other was very young. Friday looked through my telescope and suddenly shouted, "My father!" I couldn't believe it. His father was one of the prisoners. I decided to help Friday save him. We made a plan. I gave Friday a gun and kept one for myself. We crept quietly toward the beach and waited for the right moment. When the cannibals weren't looking, the old man and the young prisoner started running. We fired our guns and killed several cannibals. The rest ran away, leaving the prisoners behind. Friday ran to his father and hugged him tightly. They were both crying and laughing at the same time. It was a happy reunion. Later, I learned that the young prisoner was Friday's brother. Now there were 3 of us living together. Me, Friday, and his family. Life on the island changed after that. With Friday and his family by my side, I felt less lonely. We worked together, hunted together, and shared stories. Friday taught. Me knew things too, like how to catch fish with a spear. Over time, I realized that having company made life better. I still dreamed of escaping the island, but now I had friends to share the journey with. Ending. Years passed, and life on. The island continued to change. With Friday by my side, I no longer felt alone. Together we worked hard to improve our home, grow food, and protect ourselves from danger. Friday became more than just a friend. He was like family. He taught me new skills, like how to catch fish with a spear. And I taught him about my world, sharing stories of England and the life I once had. One morning, as we walked along the beach, we saw something unusual on the horizon. A ship. It wasn't a pirate ship. It was an English ship. My heart raced. Could this finally be my chance to leave the island? We signaled to the ship using fire and smoke, and soon a small boat came toward us. The men on the boat told us they were looking for sailors who had been stranded after their ship was damaged in a storm. When I explained my story, they agreed to take me and Friday back to England. Leaving the island was bittersweet. It had been my home for so many years, and it held countless memories, both good and bad. But I knew it was time to move on. As the ship sailed away, I stood at the edge of the deck, watching the island grow smaller and smaller. Friday stood beside me, curious and excited about the new adventures ahead. I thought about all I had learned during my time alone: patience, resilience, and gratitude for even the smallest joys in life. When we finally arrived in England, it felt strange to see crowded streets, tall buildings, and people everywhere. Everything seemed so fast-paced compared to the quiet rhythm of island life. But I was grateful to be reunited with my family and to share my incredible story with them. Looking back, I realized that being stranded on the island wasn't just a trial, it was a gift. It taught me to appreciate the beauty of nature, the value of friendship, and the strength within myself. Though I never planned to stay there for nearly 3 decades, those years shaped me into the person I am today. And so, my journey came, full circle. From dreaming of adventure as a young man to surviving against all odds, I learned that life is unpredictable, but it's also full of possibilities. Whether you're lost at sea or facing challenges in everyday life, remember this: every storm will pass, and brighter days are always waiting on the other side.